Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadre-Gram Podcast. I am your host Marcy, and today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Stephy, and I will let her introduce herself. Who are you?
Hey guys, I'm Stephy. I am a certified mess. It is the middle of Mercury retrograde, and if y'all knew what just happened just to get to this point, my hair is already up. If you're looking at this on any visuals, just know my hair was down and I had glasses and I think I looked cute. Now I look a mess, but that's me. I'm a girl from the Bronx, currently living in Florida. I'm a creative and I'm a mom of a kid on the spectrum.
Amazing. And Steffi and I connected because we're part of the most amazing, awesome mom group that they're like, obviously our community, but it's more than that. We need a lot of support, and basically we're uplifting each other through that. Mm-hmm. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about being a single mommy to a child with special needs, which is not easy. And the reason why I chose the topic is that we've been going through some stuff collectively. And, I feel like we don't get enough space to voice those concerns. Mm-hmm. And, we're going to talk about what it's like dealing with ex-partners who don't put in the equal amount of effort. We're going to be discussing taking care of our mental health, even with the load of, carrying on and being our moms on a daily basis, and all the other hats that we wear in addition to that. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the topic.
Okay, I'm ready.
But before we do, what is your career?
My career, I guess technically now I get paid as a podcast producer. I guess that's what you can say my career is. I am literally in the middle of a pivot. So up until 2020, I worked in the medical field. So I had been working in the medical field since I was 18 years old. I am going to be 38 this July. So it was a very big chunk of my life. It was the majority of Ethan's life at this point. It's only been 3 years. It'll be 3 years in August that I quit. So this is very early, and I guess you can say what is going to be my career. But it's just so weird to call it that because for so long it was something else, so it's very interesting.
So I have a question. What made you get into the podcasting space?
So in 2020, actually right before the pandemic, I found a podcast called Horrible Decisions. And I don't know if you're familiar, but most people in the podcast game are, right? Horrible Decisions is just a huge podcast, women-led, 2 Black women. It's a great podcast. It's a great listen. So I found that right before the pandemic, I want to say like end of 2019. I went through like a really bad breakup in 2019. And I swore off men or whatever. So I had a lot of time on my hands, right? So I started listening to podcasts, and the first podcast was Horrible Decisions. I had went to a live show and I just like fell in love with it. Through Horrible Decisions, I found out about Carla Wilmaris, and she actually has a course that you can take called Idea to Launch, where you can start your own podcast. She basically teaches you how to do everything. Because, and I wanted to say this, I want to give you your flowers because let me tell you something. Doing a podcast while also having a full-time job and being a mom of a child and being a special needs mom, like, girl, I get it. And I know it's fucking hard because it's my life, So I see you. So I just wanted to give you your flowers. But anyways, so it's hard to start a podcast, right? So Carla has this course that she sells and it teaches you how to do it, blah, 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 blah. Pandemic hit. I was working in a doctor's office and technically we were essential workers. So like I was still going into the city during the beginning of the pandemic, like literally April. Like I have pictures on my phone where downtown Park Avenue looked like I Am Legend. Like it was just empty. It was crazy, right? But we would only go in like partially, like 3 times a week, 2 times a week. We switched out, whatever. I went through some bullshit at work, and when the schools opened back up in September, you're a teacher, like they gave you the option. You could either have him go to school full time or have him remote. Like there was no leniency, basically. So it's like, if I sent school, for me at the time when I worked, was a form of daycare. If my son was not in school, I struggled to find someone to watch him. It's still a struggle to this day, as you know. And I struggled to find someone to watch him. So when that happens, and they were like, oh, but if we have a COVID outbreak here, if somebody happens to have COVID, the class will be closed for 10 days. And it's like, my job is not gonna rock with that. Like, they just weren't like lenient for me working at home. Like, even though I could, they weren't lenient with it. So I had to make a decision, and my decision was to stay home with Ethan, because there was no way that technically I could have done it. There's always a way, you know what I mean? Like, I could have just been like, well, on the days that happens, I have to pay for a babysitter, and like, there's always a way, right? But I knew that having Ethan, and when the way he thrives on routine, that constant disruption, because it was so early, it was 2020, okay? Like, we have come a long way in 3 years, and it's crazy when you look back and think about it, because when you're in the thick of it, you didn't think there was ever going to be a way out, you know what I mean? So that constant disruption just would have like rocked his world. So I was just like, I quit, and I got on unemployment, and I was on unemployment for a year. I had 1 year to figure out my life, literally, like, make life altering decisions. And I decided to move to Florida because the stars aligned, and there was somewhere for me to live down here, essentially, because it's not easy to just get up and leave when you are a working single mother. It's not easy. So the stars aligned. I was given the opportunity. I bought my first car, and I came down here. Like, it was this whole big life change and whatever. I get down here, and it's completely different. It is completely different from New York, and not just in the ways that everybody says, but as an autism mom, as far as services are concerned, I was very spoiled in New York City. I was very spoiled in New York City, which is crazy, because when you're there, you're like, this is bullshit, because we still need fucking help. But in other places, there's literally, there's no help. There's no help. So I'm down here, and I can't get a real job. Like, and when I say real job, I mean, like, you clock in 9 to 5, benefits and shit like that, right? Because my son goes to school from 9 to 2:30. I have to take him, and I have to pick him up. There's no such thing as after school unless I pay for it. I'm not even working yet. So that's another expense that's not even a thought, right? So I can't do that. There's no job from 10 to 1. That's not a thing. You know what I mean? And if it is, it's a bullshit job that I'm probably not going to want to really do any fucking way. Let's be for real. So I found alternate ways to get my money. And one of them was, when I had a podcast, I learned how to edit. Now I edit for other podcasts, and I edit for big podcasts. Carla Wamaris also has a company. Idea to Launch is also a company where you can hire people to produce your podcast. So I learned that during the pandemic, and I just used it to just do what I need to do now. And that's what I'm doing. And it's crazy, because I'm just in the middle of it, and it's a totally different world. You know what I mean?
Wow, what a whirlwind story. And thank you for the flowers. But yeah, the pandemic was like, it just kind of just put everything into perspective for everybody. And we just kind of have to like sit in our shit and like be like, this is not working for me anymore, you know? But I give you kudos, girl, because I don't know if I would have been able to just get up and bounce.
I don't know how I did it.
And I do know that we are exposed in New York City, and I feel like there needs to be some kind of central agency that like fucking puts everything together. Like, oh, I know it's up to state, but some kind of overarching agency that like directs people like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
you have these benefits in this state, you're moving here, this is what it's called down here.
I feel like it should be, and sorry to cut you off, but it should be associated with SSI, because there are some times where you have SSI, that's a national thing, right? Regardless, state to state, it's the same thing. But I should be able to get services then, because if I'm eligible for services in New York because my son needs them, then I should be eligible for them in Florida, and they should be offered to me in the same way. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Wait, so what happened with SSI? You were you guys able to get anything?
Girl, I'm not going.
Oh my god!
I don't get SSI. Let's just say that.
Oh my god!
Let's just say that. It's disgusting.
It's so arbitrary, and like the people, it all depends if somebody's in a good mood. Easy to like if they like you and they're in a good mood, they're like, oh, here, have all the services. But it shouldn't be that way. Like there needs to be somebody checking these people, and then there should be like some kind of like national measure. But I guess that's too much to ask. I love the fact that you're using what you learned during the pandemic as your business, which is dope. So you said Ethan has autism. So can you walk us back in time a little bit? What was that like for you at the beginning? And what was it that you noticed when you decided to take him to be referred?
So Ethan, I noticed Ethan had some symptoms when he was about to be 2, a little, maybe like 20 months old, I don't know, whatever those months are, right? I think I noticed he wasn't trying to talk, but also I saw regressions in him, and that was the big thing. So Ethan really never really spoke until he was about, I want to say like 4 or 5. That's when he was saying actual words. But he would point, he would, if I would say 1, 2, like he would copy me. At around 20 months old, he just stopped completely. It was, and it's crazy to say, it was almost like I saw like a light come out, like turn off, when it came to understanding, you know what I mean? And grasping, like it wasn't there anymore. So I would just see my kid and I'm like, I see the change. So I went to his pediatrician and I was like, I see this, like, this is what's going on. And I know there's something wrong. I know, and I don't want to say wrong, but like for real, like it's, that's not typically how it's supposed to be. Right. So he's like, well, and this was 12 years ago at this point. Right. Cause my son is going to be 14. It was actually around this time when he was, it was actually around this time, 12 years ago. So they were like, we can't really test him until he's over 2 years old. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we waited until then. We got him tested. My son was in early intervention by the time he was almost 3. By the time we got all the evaluations and all the appointments, and all of that is a process. I don't know what the process is looking like now, post COVID, especially, from you hear from girls in the group, like when they're getting evaluated now, I feel like it's completely different from when Ethan was evaluated.
Yeah, definitely is. Like oh no, there's a wait list and like all this stuff, and I'm like, I mean, we did have somewhat of a wait list, but it wasn't
really a wait list. It was just like, oh, the next appointment is 6 weeks from now or something like that. But it wasn't oh, we have to wait to call you to get an appointment. Like that, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. And it's sad because there's so many more kids being diagnosed now that these departments are overwhelmed. And it's like, they literally cannot, it's not physically possible to do it because they don't have enough, people who can evaluate. They don't have enough people who can write these reports. And it's just not enough time in the day to do it, which is sad because you would think as the numbers rise, because you said it in your event, I didn't know the actual numbers until, I knew they were going up, but I didn't know until I went to your event that they had gone up. They had almost tripled. That's insane.
And I see it in the classroom all the time. And the amount of parents that are still in denial, that are not even trying to get their kids evaluated at all, is... I was just on the phone, actually, guys. It's the day of the final parent-teacher conference. This is like not official for all the kids, but it's for the kids that are like promotion in doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And having these conversations with these parents, like, you literally wasted an entire year in kindergarten, and you're still like fighting us about like whether your child is like has special needs or not.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, we see this in the classroom, and your child is not reading, and by the time they get to first grade, they need to be on level D, and then they need to be what was it? They need to be on a level L by the time they finish first grade. First grade is the grade where they have to jump up the most reading levels. So if your child does not know the letter sounds, is not reading, doesn't know like the high frequency words, then that is a big warning sign. Another thing. One of the parents, we told her the little girl can't count past 3.
Yeah.
And she's like, I ain't know in the house she counts. I'm like, girl, it doesn't matter if she does it in the house. We need to see it at school. There's something wrong that we don't see it at school, you know? Nothing wrong with the child, but there's something going on. There's a situation. Why is she not showing us this skill at school? You know, where she's supposed to be.
She needs more assistance. And that's the thing. There's such this stigma with kids on the spectrum that these parents don't want to admit that their kid is on the spectrum. It's a spectrum for a reason. Me and Marcy's sons, they're close in age. They are two completely different beings. Like, just because they're both on the spectrum does not mean that they are exactly the same. They are completely different. And people don't understand that it's literally, it can be, you can see someone in the street, and sometimes I notice them and I'm like, that person right there, I know they're on the spectrum. I can see it. It's like once you're, I don't know if it's just because, you know, he's so close and, you know.
It's like queer eye for autism. I have it.
Yes. And my sister talks about it too. And we're just like, you can see it. And, you know, I don't know. That's a good way to put it. A queer eye for autism. That's hilarious. But they can, because they're passing, quote unquote, right? Because that's what they are, typically passing. But if you got to know them, if you really watch them, you're like, oh, they're dealing with something that is, you know, inhibiting from progressing in a way, in whatever that may be, whether it's speech, whether it's social communication, whether it's, you know, just it's a lot. There's a lot of things that could be autism. And people, because they are the ones that are severe, they're the ones that, you know, they are never potty trained, or they will never be able to live independently. That is a thing as well, because people think about that first. Because if you think about it, the only way autism was really depicted in the media was like, the girls were talking about this movie in the chat the other day, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but Leonardo DiCaprio.
I saw part of it. Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio's character, looking back, I didn't know it when I saw it back in 1990, whatever. But looking back, Leonardo DiCaprio's character had autism. That's basically what he had. But he was, you know, he couldn't leave the house. He didn't go to school. He didn't talk. He was emotionally, you know, he had a lot of issues. When you think about autism, you think about that automatically. You think about all the negative things that can go with it, and you don't want your kid associated with it, because you're like, no, he's in regular school. He's, you know, he's able to do this. He's able to do that. Just because he's having a problem here in this one area doesn't mean he has autism, when that's not the case.
Yeah. And there's another movie that, now that you mentioned What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I think they came out around the same time. I know the main character's name was like Nell, and she used to live she was like la abandonaron. She was living by herself in like the swamp in Louisiana or something. And she was nonverbal. She was like not nonverbal completely. She was like very, very limited verbal. And then the person was like trying to teach her how to talk and like going through all this stuff, and then she wouldn't be able to interact with people. Like now that I'm looking at, I'm like, girl, that girl was autistic. And then looking at the little girls that were diagnosed when I was working in District 75 with girls, for them to get a diagnosis, it has to be very severe, because girls, what is considered feminine traits in girls, if boys display that de una vez, they're like, oh no, something's wrong, right? But if the girls do
then
the same
she's
thing,
just
like,
shy.
oh, no,
she's quiet.
she's just very dainty. She's quiet. She's shy.
Let me tell you something. And I know this is very controversial, so I feel like I got to sit up for this. You know, all over Twitter and TikTok and all of that, everyone talks about how, oh, you know, I have anxiety, I have ADHD, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to hold you. I have something. I'm not a doctor. I'm 38 years old. Nobody was evaluating me when I was in school. I've never gotten evaluated because I've always passed in school, whatever. But I do think it may not be an intellectual disability, but there's something wrong with like my cognitive function sometimes. Like, just, I might have ADHD. It might be, you know, some sort of autism because I'm awkward. I didn't really talk to anybody but my mother until I was like 5 years old.
Wow. Okay.
But I was just quiet and I was shy. And girl, I was supposed to be talking. Like, let's be fucking for real. You know what I mean? So you say that's funny, but because I spoke to my mom and whatever, you know, everybody thought it was okay. You know what I mean?
I had a child on the spectrum. She was selective mute. And dude, it was so hard. Like, I had her in my ICT class because socially she had friends, right? She wouldn't talk to anybody, but she had mad friends. But that year was like one of the hardest years because I had to like really, like, my patience grew to I don't even know how many sizes. You know how like the Grinch's heart, like, I love this little girl so much. So you know what I used to have to do to evaluate her reading, because she wouldn't read to me. She wouldn't say not 2 words to me. But the minute she turned the corner to go home, she would talk her mother's ear off. So what her mother used to do was I would give her the guided not the guided reading book, the assessment book, the Fantasy Panel, right? The little book. And she would read it to her mother. Her mom would record her audio, not visual, and send me the voice notes so that I can evaluate it. Okay? Wow. And how are you gonna tell me that's not socially acceptable behavior, right, to me?
As far as like what society deems, because then that's also what we have to think about, right? Like, when it comes to saying quote unquote what's normal and what isn't, like, people learn differently. You know what I mean? And they shouldn't be chastised just because they do need additional support, or they, you know, like, that's not a thing. So I don't know. I use those words because I talk. I'm a human being. You know what I mean? Like, that is how we were taught to communicate. But it's like, I know how it can come across sometimes. And when you're in this space, especially podcasting space, it's very easy for someone just to take a little clip of what you say and run with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, but what I'm saying is that, you know, like, according to what doctors and pediatricians, like, that's not typical behavior for a child, right? That's how she communicates right now. That's cool. But, you know, there's certain things that you have to like look out for, because
they do need the help at the end of the day. Regardless if you think it's typical or not, that child still requires the help.
They need support. They need extra support. That's all. Like, like what I said in the live show is that all that is like a passport. It gives you a passport to like access spaces that you wouldn't have had access to had your child not had a diagnosis. You know? So, yeah, no, that's bananas. But how's Ethan doing now, like, developmentally and in school and stuff?
So, he, in his school, basically focuses on, like, independence. So, like, you know, they do like writing and, you know, learn, because he has limited verbal speech, so he can express wants and needs. He's not forming sentences and having a conversation with me. He stims a lot and he repeats a lot. So, like, talking to him, he'll just repeat what you said. So like you don't really know if he understood or not. So his school focuses on like, you know, learning how to clean up, learning how to, you know, it's almost like occupational therapy in a way without it being occupational therapy.
That's good though, because people don't understand, like, academics is not everything. People need to learn how to do so many things, and then especially if our kids have so many needs, if you can get the extra support in teaching him those things, because like for us, like neurotypical, right? And I say it in quotation marks because like what is typical, whatever. But for us neurotypical people, learning those kind of things was like second nature, right? But some people need more support, and they think about you know problem. The thing that I love about our kids is that their brains just function in a different way, so they can think about doing the same thing in a completely different way than what you were thinking. Is it wrong? No, it's just a different way to do it. But if you can have support of somebody teaching them the way that would be, I guess, deemed appropriate at the time, and then like once they learn how to do it quote unquote regular, then they can do it however they want to do it. But like teaching them the initial way is important. So if you can have assistance with that, like that's awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, that was my biggest like gripe with his school. With his District 75 school, because also during the pandemic, Ethan was transitioning from 5th grade to junior high school in 2020.
Oh my god!
So when he started that school in 2020, we've never even been to that school. I don't to this day, truthfully, I don't know where it is. I never had to go. You know what I mean? We were fully remote because I worked from home, and I just didn't see the point in sending him, truthfully, because once I saw what they were learning, like, why are you asking my child what's the difference between gas, liquid, and solid? Are we fucking serious right now? What? My son barely knows the difference between water and juice, and this is not making fun of him, but this is being fucking for real. Like, we're not, you're just teaching him based on whatever book or quota or whatever, yes, that you have to teach. And it's like, my son has no idea what the fuck you're talking about. He's literally just picking one so you can go on and you can give him the tablet as his reward for finishing the work. That's what they did. So once I figured that out, I was like, holy fucking shit, this is what my son has been doing all these fucking years? I said, he's staying home with me because at least at home, we got the best services during COVID. We got the occupational therapy to come to the house. We got the speech therapist to come to the house. We had a home health aide that would come and do his laundry. I felt like a queen, let me tell you. She would come and clean. I'm like, this is fucking amazing. You know what I mean? But the schools just, what are y'all doing? Y'all aren't doing anything.
I mean, and then that's the thing. A lot of the programs, it all okay. So schools are like little separate countries. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like every district gets its own country. Every school, okay. Let's dial it back. Every district is like the European Union, and every school is its own country. Even though they all belong to this big umbrella, right?
It's like the states in the United States.
Exactly. Everybody does whatever they think is good. And unfortunately, in the school system, there's a lot of, how do I say this? Por la plata baila el mono, right? The monkey dances for the coin. I'm be real.
Okay. Yeah.
There's people that invest money, and this is reflected in the school system. A lot of the schools are run like businesses. So whoever gives the most money, that's what's going to happen in the school, unfortunately. There's some schools that are a little bit more conscientious and are real. And there's teachers that are real, that are going to teach your kid whatever it is that they need to know. I remember one teacher in the 8 to 1 to 1. Her kids were a little bit more independent than the ones that I was teaching. But she was legit like having she bought them all toothpaste and toothbrush, taught them how to brush their own teeth, how to wash their faces, porque no sabían. They didn't know.
And a lot of people might hear that and they'll be like, well, that's not the teacher's responsibility. But you have to understand that our kids also need like more support, right? But they also need to hear it from different people. Because I don't know about you, but my son don't fucking trust me. He thinks he thinks that everything I do is just like, Mom, why? No, I don't want to do that. You're not right. But let like my mom come and tell him and like reaffirm. Now he's like, oh, so other people do it this way too. Okay.
Oh my God. He's like, Mamita jodiendo, forget it.
Yeah.
No, so that was that. Okay, so this is something in the teaching, in like especially in ABA. This is called generalizing across environments. So a child needs to listen to the same thing multiple times in different environments to really absorb it and learn it.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, so one thing that we used to do in District 75 especially is that we would have a kid like working with a para, right? And the kid's doing really well, right? So then we would switch the para to see if the child was generalizing across environments. And also we would ask mom and dad if he was doing the same skill at home so that we can be like, okay, ja, he's mastered that skill. We can move on to something else that we're going to teach him or her. But yeah, no, generalizing across environments is important. And oh my God, we eat there. He's like, whatever, Mom.
You don't trust me.
Sure, Bob.
It all started with the food because Ethan is very picky.
Oh my God.
He only eats beige foods and they have to be dry.
Oy.
Girl. Literally, there's no, if he sees a color, he looks at me like, I don't know what you think. I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not eating that. Banana.
Crackers.
He'll eat crackers.
I'm trying to think of
beige crackers. Oh, it also has to be crunchy. He doesn't do soft.
So con no.
He won't eat rice.
Oh
He'll eat plátano. He'll eat tostones maybe sometimes. It depends.
Okay.
And I never know when. It's just like,
oh my God.
It's a surprise.
Oh my God. Jeez, man.
Girl, it's a struggle. That's one of my big struggles with him is his eating, truthfully. All he eats is chicken. That's why he's gonna be 7 feet tall.
Yo, but like people don't understand, like that's a big struggle in the autism community. Like those food aversions, and it's not even so much food aversions. I feel like it's that paired with the sensory processing disorder. Girl. Aiden at first, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be real. Aiden at first, all he drank was freaking leche y me la iba a dejar. He didn't want no more white milk. I had to give it to him with quick. It was first chocolate, and then he couldn't tolerate the chocolate. Then it was strawberry milk. Strawberry milk 24/7. Until the babysitter tried yogurt y después sopa. Those are the things that he's eating.
Yeah. And then it's like, you feel like a bad mom. Like, is my child, like, is he gonna survive this? Like, how are you only eating? I'm lucky that he stood with chicken. And anybody who knows me knows that Ethan is the chicken king. Okay? Ethan can eat chicken for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for the rest of his life.
Wait, he doesn't even like bacon?
He'll eat bacon, but he gets tired of it. And he goes through waves and cycles of things. So like for his cereal, right now he's eating apple cinnamon Cheerios. That's what he's eating right now. In a couple of months, it might be Cinnamon Toast Crunch. After that, in a couple of months, it might be Honey Nut Cheerios. We don't know. I just have like a stockpile of each one because I learned that I honestly don't know. Because he knows the names of the things he likes. So he'll wake up tomorrow and be like Kicks or some shit like that. And I'll be like, I have 7 boxes of Honey Nut Cheerios in the pantry.
No, Aiden, at least he eats cereal. Aiden doesn't eat cereal. Girl, he takes toasted sandwiches every day to school. Or if the day before is like a Sunday and I made extra pancakes, I'll send them with pancakes to school or waffles con bacon or huevo, and he'll eat that. But that's it, girl. That's the extent of it. He doesn't really eat sweet stuff except for like, what is it? The golden Oreos. Don't talk to him about no chocolate, nothing. He's like, no, thank you. Ew. Or like if you offer him a chocolate chip cookie, he's like, you have it, mom. And put it in your mouth, like
that is too funny.
Yum. Oh my god. Okay, so getting back to the topic, because I feel like you're such a good conversationalist that we just go all over the place, but it makes sense. So all right, we're gonna get into the kind of messy stuff. So what has it been like sharing custody with his father?
So me and his father broke up when he was 3, about to be 4, I believe. It was 2013, so whatever. No, it's about to be 10. It's 10 years ago, essentially. So we've been broken up for 10 years. Right now, he's married. He has Ethan has a baby sister. You know what I mean? And it's fine. There's no animosity or nothing. Like, we're cool. I'm cool with, the wife and Ethan's stepmom. I actually call her that. Like, there's no bad blood there. Do I feel like I take the brunt of the responsibility when it comes to Ethan? Yes. Do I get upset and triggered about it? Yes. Do I also know that I made the decision to move 1,300 miles away? Yes. So it's like, I have these moments, and you've heard me. I've had these moments where like I just break down because it is overwhelming to have to do everything alone. But I am accountable of the fact that I chose to kind of be alone for other reasons. And I just have to figure out what's going to work better for me as far as like Ethan. Like, it's hard for me because I'm alone at the moment. Like, my mom is supposed to be moving down and I'll have more support and whatever. But it's hard for me to justify leaving here when Ethan is so much more happier here. His stress levels have gone down so much because living in New York is hard. It's loud. Okay, you don't realize how loud New York is until you're not there anymore. Ethan suffers for, like, his sensory has a lot to do with sound. He always has his fingers in his ears all the time. That's also another thing where we found out he might have had a problem. Like, we were testing his hearing because he wasn't speaking or whatever, and then like they were like, no, his hearing is perfectly fine. Like, he has actually, he's very sensitive. Loud noises, the train, like my son was on 10 all the time, and I didn't realize he was on 10 all the time until I moved down here and saw when he was neutral. It's crazy.
That is bananas. Yo, but like, you know what? I'm remembering when Aiden was. I mean, the city's loud, right? But then there's like certain kids that would trigger him. So my baby cousin was. They're like 6, not even 6 months apart, like 5 months apart, right? This one, he was very like loud and like yelly and screamy. Like Aiden used to call it yelly. He used to be very yelly. He would get upset and scream, like tantrum and scream at the top of his lungs. So Aiden one day, when he took him, he like hugged him, like bear hugged him like that, like to shut up. And then another time he like smacked him in the face. But like I was like, oh my god, that is a lot of noise. And then like it wasn't until my mom was like, yo, dude, it's so loud there. And I'm like, yo, for real. Because like typical Dominican family. My family is very partyish. They like loud music. And it just so happens that this one aunt is married to a person that is like, I don't know if he's losing his hearing, but constantly there's always like loud music. Everybody's loud. They're like, screaming and yelling, and it's a lot for him. So with time, he's gotten used to it. But like at the beginning, I used to be so embarrassed because I didn't know. I was like, oh my god, my kid's bad. Like, he's hitting people. But I wasn't thinking about what was the trigger that was triggering him to do it, and it was the noise. And I've seen him like just be like he loves being in Jersey, and I wholeheartedly believe it's because
It's so quiet.
it's the suburbs. At night, you don't hear. You hear basically the crickets. It's like todo. That's all you hear. And then it's darker down there. Like he has a good old time, and he doesn't do. He doesn't even go to the backyard sometimes. Yeah. He just stays in the room, but he just enjoys the quiet so much. Even though you can literally hear him talking in the background, but he prefers for it to be quiet.
I say all the time, Ethan wants it quiet, but he's the loudest person I know. You know when Ethan walks into a room, whether it's him stimming or whether it's Caillou in the background. Like the other day, Carla calls me, we're in the car, and that's just the background noise of my life at this point. Like it's literally, I live my life I'm a walking Caillou cartoon, bro. Like the music is behind me all the time, whatever. Carla calls me, I'm in the car, and she's like, why does it sound like you're driving with Mickey Mouse? And I'm like, oh, that's Ethan stimming in the back seat. Like, I didn't even hear him, honestly. My bad.
And it's crazy because, like, yo, we get so used to their noise that is like, I remember I was dating somebody, Aiden calls him the chivo, the goat. So the comadres know who I'm talking about. So when we first started, he would love to talk on the phone. And then he had like very sensitive ears, and he's like, what's that noise in the background? I'm like, Aiden. He's like, oh, can you tell him to be quiet? I'm like, no, I'm not gonna tell you to be quiet. You need to get used to his noise. That's just him. I mean, at one point he was fine, but he's like, damn, he's on one today. I'm like, you don't even need to make the comment.
Right. I live my life perfectly fine. Like if you're gonna be here, then you have to understand, like, that is that is a part of me at this point. Like I haven't dated to the point where a lot of men have met my son. I'm
the same.
I feel like I've been single for 10 years. Well, single-ish for 10 years. Whatever. That's besides the point. I have been single for 10 years. Sorry. Honestly, Mercury retrograde has like been kicking my ass all fucking week. But listen, it's crazy. So a lot of men haven't met Ethan, but the ones who have knew, like, if you're coming to my house, if we're to that point where like he knows you, he knows you're my boyfriend, like you're in our space consistently, then he's gonna act the way he acts when you're not here as well. This is his house. This isn't your house. So if you don't like it, then you don't gotta be here. And if you're not gonna be here, then you're not gonna be here with me, and we're not gonna be together.
Yeah, like it is what it is, bro. Yeah, no. But like going back to the dad situation, so you definitely don't feel like it's like a equitable distribution of responsibilities.
I think that it's not. I think the brunt of the work does fall on me. It always has from the moment we broke up. I think that society has just made it easier for that to be the case. It's easier for a father to say, hey, I can't take him at all because I have to work. That sentence, like, that's not a sentence that you as a father have to really think twice about. A mom saying that is a real fucking big deal. Like, that's not a thing. The mom is the last and final resort, and if she can't figure it out, call the fucking cops because we're gonna take the kid away. You know what I mean?
Yo, that is like
that's insane.
I don't even like saying all my dirty laundry, but there was a situation where he who must not be named,
Voldemort. Yeah.
Voldemort done called me and told me, oh, I'm not working right now. I can't send you child support money. So that's how come I haven't sent you money since January.
So is he not supposed to eat? Is he not supposed to like?
So thank God I don't depend on what he sometimes gives me. But like the thing, the kicker for me is that like he's calling my other family members to say the same thing. I'm like,
they don't have the same responsibilities, because let me tell you something.
Que le diga yo a Aiden, yo no estoy trabajando, no te puedo comprar comida, no te puedo comprar. What's rice and chicken? I can't buy you rice and chicken in the supermarket. I'd be in jail.
Literally.
Jail.
Literally. But it's society that makes it that way. And not to say like that he's not around, because he is very like he's present but not physically. So like he asked about a lot of moms, I hear them complain like, oh, my baby daddy doesn't even know what school he's in, what his doctor's name is. No. Ethan's dad is very present in that. Now, I will say this, after a certain age, in the beginning, I was the only one taking Ethan to doctor's appointments, right? For the most part, because he lived in Brooklyn, which we lived in the Bronx. Why you would move to Brooklyn after we broke up is a whole nother story that it just makes me happy to this day. But whatever. He lives in Brooklyn, you know, he didn't have a car at the time. So him coming up to the Bronx was a big deal. Like, you know, it was a lot. And I would take him to appointments and things like that. But once Ethan became a certain age, I was like, I put my foot down. I said, listen, if they have to take blood, there is no way that I'm going to be able to hold this child down. He is too fucking big. Like, it's literally impossible. Like, my son can hurt me if I try. So I'm going to need you as his father and as a man to take him and do what you need to do. He stepped up. He did it, whatever. So like our relationship is very complicated, but I do feel like he has an out that I don't have. And we're actively working. I'm trying to be more communicative with him. We actually had a whole thing today, literally. I broke down. I was crying all morning. Just because, and not because anything really happened that was crazy bad. I lost out on a business opportunity that I couldn't go out to because I didn't have anybody to watch Ethan. And I just felt triggered by that because I feel like he's been able, when we broke up, he had like a bullshit job. Like he was working, I don't even remember. It was a bullshit job. It was a job that he was able to make money in, but it was bullshit. It was like security or something like that. He's not a security, like that wasn't his thing. You know, like he never found his footing. Now he works for the MTA. He makes good money. He was able to find a girlfriend. And this isn't to sound bitter, but he was able to date enough to find a girlfriend, to live with the girlfriend, to, you know, have time to travel and get to know each other and actually court each other and all of this to then get married. And I'm happy for him because she is amazing. She honestly, if we're going to be 100, and this might be my first time telling this in public, and I'm sorry if he ever happens to listen to this or if any of his friends happen to listen to this, no knock to him, but she made him a better person. She made him a better person that I couldn't make him. She made him a better father. He was not as present as he was until she came into the picture. And I truly believe it's because she was like, oh, you have a son? Okay, where is he? Because once she moved in, that child was there every other weekend.
That's one thing I'm going to say. The person that he was with before he was with the person he is with now was more secure in herself, in that she was like, oh, you got to pick up the baby. You're working till 6 o'clock on a Saturday. I'll stay with him and the kids. When you come back, you hang out with him, blah, 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 blah. Drop him off on Sunday, da, 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 whatever. This lady would call me, be like, oh, he's leaving right now. You expect him in the next 30 minutes. Like, really?
As like, a team. If you are coming into this life, if you're coming into this family, then you have to be a part of this team, especially for kids who have special needs, because it's like, bro, we can use all the fucking hands we get. I want her on the team. Like, yes, bring her. She can pick him up. She can drop him off. I haven't seen my baby daddy in I don't know how long, because I've dealt with her for a very long time. Oh. You see? And that's perfectly fine. We've gotten along better. And that's in that way.
Yeah, that's nice. Because the thing is, like, you really don't have nothing. He really should just be talking to your kid, not to you about anything, unless it's life or death emergency.
It's a little bit different for us. Ethan can't be the liaison between me and his father. You know, like me and him have to speak. You know what I mean? Like, we have to talk. There's like, I have to tell him what he's eating this week. You know what I mean? Like, it's different. But, you know, it is, the responsibilities do fall on me more just because of the simple fact that I'm a mom. This may not necessarily be any knock to him, but just because I am a mother, most of the responsibility falls on me. And that's a societal thing. It's not an autism thing. It's just literally a woman thing, truthfully.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the person that this guy's with now, she's very different from the other person. And we're not going to go into that one. Cause,
we don't have to.
Yeah. So tell me, because you know it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So, and us parents of children with special needs actually suffer from mental health issues 2 to 1 who are typically developing, parents of typically developing children. So have you had any struggles with mental health since your son has been diagnosed, or
I think,
you know, anything like that?
I think I always struggled with mental health, but I didn't realize it until I had my son. I feel like when I had my child, he did a lot. He taught me a lot. He taught me how to, he is so aware of himself. Nothing else matters to him, right? I say this all the time. We live in Ethan's world. Like, he doesn't give a fuck about nobody else but himself. That child puts himself first within all things. Anything that he wants to do, he will do. He doesn't give a fuck what you want, truthfully. He may not do it. He may not throw a tantrum or whatever, but he just will not do it. That's just it. Like, okay, you can try, but it's not going to happen. So I think noticing that such self-awareness made me more self-aware, and it made me more aware of my thoughts and where they were going and how I was actually feeling. I was, for a very long time, I did what everybody wanted me to do, regardless of how it made me feel. And I think I was almost on autopilot. You know, I didn't graduate high school, but, you know, I went to work straight from high school. I started working when I was 18 years old. I moved up the ladder from being a file clerk, and we don't even have paper anymore. Okay. So this is how long ago this was. I filed charts, paper charts. When I was 18 years old, that was my first job. From there, I moved up to be a receptionist. From being a receptionist, they taught me how to do billing. From doing billing, they taught me how to schedule surgeries. And from there, I was scheduling surgeries for like the top hand doctor on Park Avenue in Mount Sinai, like crazy. Like, I was doing very good for someone who got her GED. You know what I mean? No schooling, no nothing. And I just felt like, because that's what I was supposed to do, I made it. I was on autopilot. And then when I noticed Ethan was so adamant of not doing the things he didn't want to do, I started noticing, like, there are so many things I don't want to do that I just do. And they're literally, when I stopped doing that, I realized how much happier it made me. But that awareness of happiness also kind of makes the depression more real, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's something that we say, because you know that I'm studying to be a Kundalini yoga teacher, and one of my teachers said this weekend, like, really resounded with what you said, and she said, "No mud, no lotus." Like, you cannot notice good things in your life if you haven't been through bad. If there hasn't been darkness, you won't be able to notice the light. So that's real. That is so real.
Yeah.
That is so real.
So it's just like, I've struggled in the past, and now that I've seen the happiness, it's crazy. And there's things that I do. I wouldn't say I meditate, because when you say meditate, people think like you're sitting in lotus position and you're just like, whatever. But like, I get real inside myself. Like, I'm in my thoughts. Like, those, you cannot take me out of those thoughts if you paid. Like, it's just not gonna happen. And that helps me. I get real introspective. I see how things make me feel, and I just base my life around that. And since I've been doing that, like, yeah, I've gone through bullshit, but honestly, like, this is the happiest I've been in a very long time, which is crazy because it's also the loneliest I've been.
Yeah.
And to actually say those two things in the same sentence is kind of crazy, and you don't think they correlate. But when you can learn to be happy by yourself, you don't want anybody in your life who can't add to that.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm gonna correct you. There is something that I can teach you. It's called a walking meditation, sis. And you can walk and meditate at the same time. And you don't have to be in no ningún freaking lotus position. Listen, people's minds, you have a monkey mind. You know, like that's what they call it in yoga. It's like your mind is hopping from thought to thought. And we need to learn how to accept those thoughts, observe them, and let them go. Because that, you know, if you perseverate in them, then you're really not meditating because you're like, ay, Dios mío, why the hell can I concentrate? Oh my God. And then that's taking up the time that you're supposed to be introspective. You're supposed to have thoughts while you're meditating. It's not supposed to be like completely blank and gone. You're supposed to have thoughts, but you know, you can be more introspective in the sense that you're paying attention to those thoughts and then you're seeing where your mind is going. And then that's why it's good also after you meditate to like journal, right? Journal what came up. Sometimes I'm in a meditation and like stuff will come up from when I was like, what, like 6 or 7 years old. And I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? Like this.
And sometimes they can be scary.
And I write it down. Yeah. Because it depends. Because like there's mantra meditation. Like you're chanting mantra. And you're doing like a repetitive movement and you're meditating at the same time. So there's things that's going to come up during that meditation. So it's important to like acknowledge it and then like let it go. So yeah, so I'm glad that you are able to help yourself through that. So let's get into some topics that I wanted to talk with somebody in the autism community about. So what do you think about this what is his name? The new mayor, Eric, whatever his name is.
Eric Adams?
That guy. Yeah, Eric Adams. What do you think about this new child care initiative?
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie to you. Since I'm not in New York anymore, I don't really know much about it. I did read up on it a little bit. It wasn't is it just for like special needs or is it just earlier intervention in general?
I just think it's
okay. So let me ask you this. Didn't the other mayor already do that?
He's rebranding. It says, you know how it is in the government.
I'm sorry.
Slap a sticker on it and call it something
That was
else.
the other mayor's whole like shtick. That was his whole like selling point.
But I don't think, is it early intervention or is it like childcare?
From what I mean, to me, it sounded like just early schooling, not just early I don't think it was. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Mercury has been Mercurying, and I could have not understood the topic.
This is the mayor that I have never seen a mayor so much indictment in my life. Yep. He's always indictment. Okay, let's see. Blueprint for childcare and early childhood education, focusing on ensuring New York City families have equitable, high quality, and affordable early education and care. The office it says a historic investment in childcare and
it's giving Head Start. Like that's what it sounded like to me. So the fact that he's like doing all of this and then it's like they're praising him for it. It's like we had that already. Like y'all might not have known.
I'm gonna read more into it and give the comadres the lowdown about what it means. But yeah, there's a lot of this mayor's full of contradictions. Like today, was it today or yesterday? He was receiving a literacy award, while simultaneously he's cutting the money in the budget for the libraries in the schools. It's
ridiculous.
And for literacy programs in the schools. So how are you getting a literacy award?
They just love, I don't understand, like, oh, children this and children that, and, you know, it's always, oh my God, we have to protect the kids until there's shootouts in the school, until you're taking away all the learning programs from all these kids. Like, everybody complains about music, right? And how music has turned to shit. Well, you know why music has turned to shit? Because they've taken music programs.
They took away the music.
Nobody knows how to play instruments anymore.
My school, where I'm at right now, is the one school that has a music program. That, like, they have a teacher.
I learned,
like a person.
I learned how to play piano. I can play a little bit piano now, okay? Like, I had to take a whole semester in John F. Kennedy High School, a fucking high school in the Bronx, piano. That's not a thing anymore. And that is so sad. That is so sad.
Like, we were learning how to read sheet
yes
in elementary school.
Yes.
And I mean, I can carry a tune, sis, pero, you know what I'm saying? But that's like another way for kids. So there's different types of intelligences, and musical expression is one of them. And I feel like cutting that out and just making it like all like academic, like that's not feeding into who our children are as a whole.
At all.
They're not thinking about a child as a whole, like as an entire being. It's not everybody is smart in either reading or math. There's other intelligences. Like there's kids that could be intelligent in like agriculture, right? How are we gonna know? We're not gonna know that because we don't even do any of that in the school. And if we do cover it in science, it's like for like a 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that.
But
you know, are the kids really learning?
To cut really. Literacy is crazy, and like libraries, it's disgusting. Like you have no other. I understand. Like maybe books they're probably getting more expensive because people aren't buying them. That's probably what it actually really like leads to.
It's really not because I'm the library teacher. And we just put in an order the other day.
Oh, never mind. I'm always like,
but there's probably
always like, fuck capitalism.
There's probably other stuff going on in the background that led to that initiative. But we will be reporting back to you and seeing what the heck is really going on. Because we don't want to make like incendiary comments and like be like, oh my God, fuck capitalism, but also fuck capitalism. For real. So what have you done to kind of help yourself mental health wise, and how has that helped you mother in a better way? Because I love the fact that you told me that you learned how to like not give a shit and make yourself happy from Ethan. That's amazing.
Yeah. How have I don't know. I guess I just try to be more understanding and more aware of Ethan's triggers. And then like I mentioned before, realizing his triggers made me realize my own triggers, because I never really thought about it before. So when you know your triggers, then you know not only how to avoid them, but how to express them to people how to express your boundaries, basically. Yeah. You know, so me learning how to express my boundaries has really made me a better person, and in turn a better mother, because I'm not as stressed all the time, because I have set up these boundaries, and it's like I'm not getting all these triggers that I was getting before because my boundaries were non-existent. So everybody was triggering me all the fucking time, and it's like I couldn't express why, and I because I didn't understand why until I got in tune with what my triggers actually were. And I definitely learned that from him because he's so self-aware, you know? Yeah. And then just also, I have to be so aware of what triggers him. And, you know, it's helped me be a better mother. Oh, this is where I was going. Because I have to really identify his triggers, because he can't really express to me what his triggers are. You know what I mean? So it's like, I know that there's a certain type of soap that he can't use, but he won't tell me, not because it hurts him in any sort of way, but because it has these little itty bitty beads that he doesn't want to touch. So he's using it, and I'm telling him to wash his face, but he won't. He'll only use the tip of his fingers because he doesn't want to push down. And I'm just, but he can't express that to me. So when we would do it, I'm just thinking he's being difficult, when in reality it's just that he doesn't want to touch the itty bitty beads. So I have to be mindful of these things, right? So just being mindful for him has taught me to be mindful for myself. And, you know, it's just a cycle. When I'm happy, he's happy. When he's happy, I'm happy. Like, you know, we just try to go in this little cycle, for real.
I love that. So how have you learned to tap more into your inner child, like after being a mom? I feel like after you become a mom, like you give yourself permission to play.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm a big creative. I love to color. I love to Halloween is my favorite holiday. Ethan had the best costumes up until last year. Like, yeah, Ethan had the best costumes like up until last year when he was literally like, I don't want to get dressed up for Halloween anymore. Like he just was not with it.
No.
He wasn't with it. But I love Halloween. I love dressing up. I love doing all things creative. When I was young, I used to play with my hair a lot. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I changed my hair a lot.
Yeah.
I changed my hair a lot. And I think that's kind of like, that comes from my inner child because like I used to have the little Barbie head. They used to do like the salon things.
Oh, yeah.
I used to love to do that and play with all that.
And like I could do that to
literally.
my hair.
It's probably why I have not much hair now, but that's fine. Nobody, it is what it is. But yeah, so I just feel like all things creative. I like to create things. I like to arts and crafts and things like that. That's definitely how I tap into it for sure.
I love that. Okay, so speaking of dating and single mommyhood, so how do you tap into your divine feminine and sexuality after becoming a mom? Because I feel like a lot of us, especially Latinas, we're taught to be like, no, tú eres una Santa Marcy de Washington Heights. No, I'm not. So how do you tap into your divine feminine and sexuality after becoming a mother?
It wasn't so much that I lost it because I became a mom. So I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican, but my mom, who is Dominican, isn't really like your typical Dominican, right? Like most people who meet her think she's Puerto Rican, actually. She doesn't have an accent. She is very much Americanized. Like she loves watching, the Cooking Channel and Big Brother and Survivor, like all those shows. Like she's very much not your typical Dominican woman, right? So I didn't grow up so much with like, oh, like what you described as like being in a typical Latina household. It was very much free. My mom took me to get my belly button pierced when I was 15 years old. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like that for me. But when I met my son's father, he is Dominican, and I felt like I had to pull back a lot because it was like, oh, you're not supposed to be like that. You're my woman. We're together. Blah, 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 blah. You can't go on girls' trips. Blah, 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 blah. He was also 5 years older than me. So it was like, it was a lot. So when we broke up, I was 27, about to be 28. And I had recently just like lost like 80 pounds. Girl, I was skinny. Let me tell you, skinniest I ever fucking been. I was going on trips. I remember I met this girl and like we were friends for a little while, and she thought I lived in Atlanta as many times as I used to go to Atlanta. Okay. I was out here. At that point, I was living with my mom. So like I knew Ethan was good. So I would take a weekend and be like, bye, you're gonna be with grandma for 2 days. You know what I mean? Like I would be out. So whatever. It was a very crazy time in my life. I've reformed from then. But when I broke up with my son's father, I kind of reclaimed that sexuality again, right? Like that sexiness, like it was always there, but it was repressed for so long because I felt like it had to be. Now if you meet me, like I don't wear bras ever. Like I just don't. It's not my thing. I don't really have big breasts, but like I have cleavage. Like to me, I go to the nude spa, I go to like the nude beaches. Like the body to me isn't something that I'm just like, it's not something that I feel I need it to be sexualized. I just embrace it. And that's where my divine like femininity comes from. You know what I mean? Like I embrace myself regardless of what I look like. And that's been a struggle and a journey for me within itself. Like I said, when I was with my son's father, I was like 50 pounds heavier than what I am now. And right now I'm heavy. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was a lot. So when I got really skinny, I got more comfortable with myself and I got to love myself. But then that journey of gaining weight back, having to train myself that I can still love myself even if I'm not skinny. That has been a journey within itself. And that's kind of what I tap into as far as like how I see myself and how I radiate my femininity.
I love that. That's so dope. Because, like, I feel like after a certain age in your 30s, like, you just start embracing your body, however it is. And my friend the other day, Ami, she was on the show. Shout out to Ami. I was getting my nails done, and she was telling me, she's like, I'm here and I'm on the boardwalk and we're having ice cream, and I hear this mom walking down the boardwalk with her daughter, and she's like, oh my God, I'm gonna eat this ice cream. I'm not gonna be able to wear a bikini this summer. She was like, you will wear that bikini and you will eat that ice cream. The beach is gonna get whatever body you got. Like, we need to stop making ourselves feel bad about eating. Number one, that's terrible. But also, like, who cares? Nobody's really, like, everybody's so much in their head that nobody's really looking at
and
anybody.
If they are, I don't give a fuck. What do their thoughts have to do with me?
Yes.
Absolutely fucking nothing.
Most of the time, it's a projection anyway. Like, they're seeing something in you that they don't like about themselves, and they're like,
oh, let me tell you, I love that. That projection, I thrive off of that projection. Because yes, feel away because you wish you were like this. Like I said, I don't wear a bra ever. It's not me. It's not my ministry. As soon as I left corporate, I burned my bras for real. Like it was 1970. I promise you. I said, fuck y'all. I'm not doing this shit no more. So I live in a very small town in Florida. It's very much Caucasian over here. So here I come with my very much Latina self walking into Publix without a bra, and all these old white men and all these old white ladies are clutching their pearls all the time. Like, how dare you leave the house like this? And you're a mother? Bitch, I don't give a fuck. You should see how I walk around this house with my kid. I don't care. And that's another thing that I kind of had to realize from him as well. I had to get comfortable with my naked body so that he could get comfortable with his naked body, but also understand that the body is just a body. It's not sexual. That's what I teach my son. Women's bodies are not sexual. So if he happens to see breasts in the street, like if there's a woman walking around with her nipples out, because it is 2023, it can happen. He's not going to feel like that is a sexual thing because it's normal to him. Mom walks around with her titties out all the time. People are so scared to like, oh, and this is something completely different, but I don't know if you've ever been to Riverbank State Park, their pool. So, okay, I don't know how recently you've gone or if you've ever gone with just you and your son, but boys are not allowed in the locker room anymore. Ethan, the last time I went, Ethan was probably like 8 years old, maybe. So he was still young. I was still taller than him at this point. That's how I know he was young. And I was told he couldn't come into the locker room with me because, the last time a boy on, with a disability went in there, he made the women feel uncomfortable. Now, granted.
Wait,
oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
A boy with a disability.
Granted, I don't know if it was a woman or if it was a little girl. I don't know what the situation was. So I didn't want to make it seem like, oh, whatever. I get that. But also they had to hold my son in the front while I changed, and then they brought him through a back door. That's how we got into the pool that day. If you are not able, if you have this rule where you don't want boys in the women's locker room because sexual bodies are not normalized, and some little boys are so repressed from seeing the human body that when they see it, all they associate it with is sex and porn and all of that automatically it turns into a sexual thing, and that can be dangerous. So instead of changing that narrative, I get looked at like, oh, you're a slut because I can see your nipples through your shirt.
I feel like the human body is a temple, whatever. pero también like let people do whatever they want to do as long as you're not harming anybody and it's consensual. Dale pa allá. That's my take on everything. And I mean, I did grow up in that conservative Dominican household, and how dare you try to leave the house con obras en freca? That was literally like. Ahora I do it sometimes. Like, I have to go to the supermarket, but I make sure it's winter and I'm wearing a coat over it, and it's not like I can't like. I don't feel comfortable. Like going to work with no bra.
I wouldn't feel comfortable going to work with no bra either. Like, don't get me wrong. But I don't have to wear those type of clothes anymore. Like, I'm in tank tops and, I live in Florida. Like, let's be for real. My shirt is a bra, essentially, because it's so fucking hot. Like, let's be, like, I don't need to wear two of them at all. But it's just, like, it's so freeing for me. And it kind of, I've always been this way, but when I worked in corporate, I told you I burned all my bras the day I quit because it was just like, I can't do this shit no more.
I can just picture freedom.
That's exactly what it was.
Like a Simpson episode. That's so funny. Oh my God. Steffi, thank you so much for coming on my show. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely needed. I'm going to end the episode how I usually end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod on Instagram and follow Steffi on Instagram at, can you drop your
_ Stephy Kiss, STEPHYKISS. And while I have you, you can check out the Autism Mami Pod. I haven't released an episode in about a year, but there are over 100 episodes between the Autism Mami Pod and the Do I Look Fat podcast. But you can find it under Autism Mami Pod wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Amazing. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at Marcy@comadreandopod.com or slide up into my DMs. Thank you for spending time with your comadres. You are officially a comadre, Steffi. Welcome. Yay.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.